let me share a sad experience that occurred to me, which I hope never happens to anyone else. However, if it does, perhaps my story can offer some help. My wife received an invitation to a formal company ball that required ballroom attire. A few weeks before the event, she began to feel extremely anxious about everything. She even asked me if I was sure I wanted to attend it. She suggested that it would be fine if we stayed home and relaxed instead. Normally, she would beg me to accompany her to social gatherings, and if I insisted on staying home, she would give me a list of chores to do. But it was strange when my wife suggested that we relax instead of going to the ball, but I reassured her that I was attending. As the day of the event approached, I noticed that she was excessively using her phone, but she didn't explain why. I felt hesitant to ask her about it. During a car ride, her phone connected to the Bluetooth, and she panicked, repeatedly pressing the power button. Her face turned red, and she avoided eye contact, staring out of the window. I felt concerned and wondered what she was so paranoid about me seeing. After my wife went into the store, I noticed that her phone was on the seat beside me. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to look through it. Although I found nothing interesting in the text messages, I stumbled upon an open email indicating that she had test results available on her doctor's website. I clicked on the link and discovered that the results were positive for an incurable STD. The gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks, and I couldn't believe what I had just read. I wondered if she had any intention of telling me about it soon. It had been 3 months since we had sex, which was the longest we had gone. The test results were dated from 4 days ago. My wife rushed back to the car with groceries. My mind raced with thoughts of whether I had contracted the STD too. I decided to quickly check one last thing on her phone. I searched for WhatsApp and discovered that she had it installed. I opened the app and found a conversation with a man named Michael. The only Michael I knew of was her boss. I immediately locked her phone and placed it back on her seat. When my wife got into the car, she appeared relieved to see her phone. She scanned me closely for a few seconds, trying to discern if I had looked through it. I managed to compose myself and drove us to the ball without raising any suspicion. However, I didn't have another opportunity to check her phone. Even though I wanted to confront her about the test results, I decided against it for the time being. I didn't sleep with her that night, and the questions I had were still lingering in my mind. I wondered when she had planned to tell me about her diagnosis and why she hesitated to do so. But the possibility of her cheating on me crossed my mind since I didn't have the same diagnosis. Or confirm it. As we entered the ball, my thoughts were consumed with these questions and doubts. I found our seats at a table, and my wife set down her small handheld purse. The temptation to sneak a peek at her phone was strong, but I held back. Soon after, her boss greeted us personally, kissing my wife's hand and expressing his happiness that she was there. My wife introduced me to him with little enthusiasm, and he showed the same level of disinterest towards me. He then asked if he could have the first dance with my wife, and I felt compelled to agree, even though I didn't want to. As they danced, I kept a close eye on them, hoping to catch any signs of wrongdoing. It looked like they were whispering to each other, which only fueled my suspicions. The situation was becoming increasingly strange, and I had reached my limit. Without any concern for whether my wife would catch me, I began to look through her phone. As I opened WhatsApp, my suspicions were confirmed. Michael had confirmed his arrival time, and they had made plans to sneak away as soon as I was out of sight. I looked up at them in shock as they were currently at the bar getting drinks. I continued scrolling through their messages, which revealed intimate details about their sexual encounters and their desire to have more. My wife told him about her recent diagnosis, and he apologized for not telling her about it earlier. She got upset and texted him, asking how she could tell me that she now had an incurable STD after 7 years of marriage. He suggested that she could avoid telling me altogether if she left me for him. I took screenshots of their conversation and saved them to my phone. Later, I used my wife's phone to share the screenshots on her social media accounts, where she had many friends in the ballroom community. At the event, I noticed people checking their phones, gasping, and then searching for either my wife or the boss. I saw that some of the messages contained slanderous comments about their colleagues and employees. One person urgently alerted the boss to a problem, and he left the ballroom to attend to it. Meanwhile, my wife was left alone, and I saw her walking back towards our table. She appeared very uncomfortable, as if she had sensed that something was wrong and people were staring at her. When she greeted me, she seemed skeptical, and I pretended to smile and folded my hands in front of me. I stated that I will be initiating divorce proceedings, as she is no longer my spouse. She was shocked and sat beside me, inquiring about the reason for my decision. I returned her phone and asked her to check something she had posted a few moments ago. She appeared bewildered and seemed to struggle to comprehend what I was saying. As she checked her phone, I observed a look of anguish appear on her face, and she looked back at me with tears in her eyes and her hand covering her mouth. She had realized that her boss had likely been terminated, which would also result in her own termination. In her own termination, she became aware that everyone in the room was staring at her. They now knew for certain, instead of just speculating, that she was having an affair with her boss, and that both of them had contracted an STD. It was a despicable and disgusting situation. Overcome with emotion, she cried uncontrollably as she gathered her belongings and left the hotel. I followed her slowly, acknowledging every person who looked my way with a nod. Despite having the keys to my car in my pocket, I had no intention of giving her a ride back to my house. When I reached the car, she was standing there with her arms folded. I asked her what she thought she was doing. She expressed that she wanted to get into the car and go home. I inquired whether she intended to go to her parents' house or her boss's house. She appeared shocked and distressed, imploring me not to do this and insisting that I couldn't be serious. I made it clear to her that I was indeed serious and that she would never return to my house or ride in my car again. As I unlocked my door, I only entered and locked it again. She began to scream, begging me to let her in, but soon her pleas turned into desperate sobs. A crowd had gathered outside the hotel and was watching us near her car. They were all aware that she was the one who had been involved with her boss. She was the one who had contracted the STD. She eventually gave up trying to persuade me to let her into the car and instead sprinted into the woods along the parking lot. I drove home without giving her any further thought. The next day, I scheduled a doctor's appointment to get tested. 3 days later, I received my test results, which fortunately came back negative. Meanwhile, I learned that my ex's boss had been fired as soon as he got a chance to escape the intense scrutiny he was facing. He quickly packed his bags and left, laughing all the way. He stopped to pick up my ex, and they both disappeared from town and haven't been seen since. I placed all of my ex's belongings between 2 tarps outside, which was more consideration than she had ever given me. However, she never returned to retrieve them. My dog was my most helpful support system during the breakup. I also found out that my ex had been dumped by Michael after just 5 months. I was stunned by the news. History. It was a glamorous yet unfortunate way to discover the disturbing secrets that my wife had hidden from me. It was fortunate that she had put down her phone, allowing me to expose their infidelity and shameful behavior to everyone they associated with. It was also fortunate that I hadn't slept with her before discovering the truth. It is also fortunate that I wasn't tricked into raising a child born out of their affair. My ex-wife's behavior was akin to that of a succubus, likely choosing to sleep with her boss because of his wealth. For a woman who behaves in such a manner can never be trusted. It is indicative of a lack of proper values in life, and she may never develop them unless humbled by life's challenges. It seems like she went through some hardships brought on by her own actions. I wish you all the best. Peace. Moving on to today's second story. My girlfriend, who is 22 years old, had a job babysitting for someone, and my girlfriend and I both knew a really nice family from church who happened to be wealthy, so spending time in their house was enjoyable. Fortunately, their younger children were well behaved and went to bed easily, making babysitting a breeze. On a few occasions, she invited me over while the kids were asleep, but we never engaged in any inappropriate behavior, although it did feel like we could have. The family also had an older son named John, who was 18 years old. Despite being an older sibling, they didn't usually ask him to babysit due to his busy schedule with hockey practice and other activities. While my girlfriend was babysitting, she suddenly stopped responding to my texts. I became worried that something was seriously amiss. Although she had previously mentioned that the kids were asleep, I considered the possibility that one of them may have awakened. After waiting an hour without hearing back from her, I decided to drive over to her location to investigate. Initially, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. There were no flashing police lights or any other indications of danger. As I walked up to the front door, I observed a strange movement through the window. I placed my hands around my eyes to peek through a small gap in the blinds and see inside the living room. I was taken aback when I caught John in the act of having sex with my girlfriend. In shock, I turned away and attempted to open the front door, only to find that it was locked. Suddenly, a car sped into the driveway and screeched to a halt. John's father jumped out of the car and rushed towards me. Acting on instinct, I raised my hands and explained that I had just arrived. However, John's father paid me no attention and hurriedly unlocked the front door. He charged inside with John's mother following closely behind, demanding to know what was going on. My girlfriend let out a scream, and John began to shout. In response, John's father ordered him to leave the house immediately, as he was not allowed to be there. This unprotected premarital sex in their home with his younger siblings asleep upstairs. He asked them how terrible it would have been if the kids came downstairs and found them having sex. He looked to my girlfriend, who had only managed to get her underwear back on, and told her she was supposed to be the responsible adult in this situation, and she failed miserably. It was then that my girlfriend noticed I was standing in the doorway. She burst into tears and put the rest of her clothes on. She apologized sincerely to John's dad, mom, and me before she got in her car and left. As soon as my cheating girlfriend left, I realized that I no longer belonged there. Just as I was about to leave, John's mother came outside and closed the front door to drown out the shouting between John and his father. She expressed her remorse to me for the predicament I found myself in, and reassured me that the end of one relationship did not signify the end of the world. I thanked her and inquired about how they were aware of the events that had taken place in the house. She revealed that they had a hidden camera in the living room that streamed to their mobile phones. And although they had seen me every time I visited their house, they didn't mind my presence since they knew I was a well-behaved man. In fact, they believed that their children were safer with me around. I confided in my parents about everything that had happened. Although I'd lived alone, I still needed their support. They advised me to cut off all ties with my girlfriend, as she had demonstrated that she was not fit to be a wife. However, just as we were discussing this, she called me. She claimed that she had learned her mistake and promised never to repeat it. Although I believed her, I had no intention of getting back together with her. Instead, I asked her to explain why she had cheated on me and what had happened. When I asked my girlfriend why she had cheated on me, she admitted that after John returned home, he struck up a conversation with her and eventually propositioned her for sex. She gave in without much thought, which was painful for me to hear. I couldn't understand how she could be so careless and act on her primal instincts without any consideration for our relationship. Meanwhile, spiritually teachers Izzy, and had remained loyal to her, even when a woman from my job made advances towards me. That phone call was the tipping point, and I decided then and there that I couldn't stay with her anymore. thing dirt same phone call. I let my girlfriend know that it was over between us. I wished her the best and hung up. Even though she tried calling me multiple times afterwards, I never answered. John's parents had informed my ex's parents and the church about what had happened at their house while she was supposed to be babysitting. Accessions. I haven't kept in touch with my ex, but I heard that she had moved out of town. I am sorry to hear that you had to go through the distress and anxiety of discovering your girlfriend's infidelity. It's unfortunate that she did not show more respect towards you, that family, and even herself. Based on her actions, it seems like she may not be mature enough for a committed relationship or even a job. You made the right choice by seeking support and ending the relationship. Jason, a trustworthy and responsible partner, would never take any action that could endanger their relationship, even if they believe no one is watching. I wish you all the best as you move forward. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.